Hello again.
Hi.
Glad you're back. And what we thought we would share today is a little bit about the fundamentals of the coaching that we do around our program here. We often talk about this understanding that's the basis of our coaching. It helps people really begin to see life differently and have different responses and have better success rate at making change in their life, lasting change, doesn't fall back into old habits. And someone asked me the other day, they said, well, what's the bottom line of this understanding you talk about? And I don't know that I can give one bottom line, but I know one of the most significant aspects that's really made a difference in my life, created some lasting change that I'm very happy about, is that I'm always feeling my thinking. When I first heard that phrase, it made no sense at all. So let me try and explain that a little bit more. Maybe you can help too.
Sure. You start.
Okay. Um, you know, when I'm experiencing life, it's just happening. And it seems like that there's only one road to go down. That's the road I'm on. But what I've begun to see, and there were indications of this all along, but what I've begun to see so clearly is that my feeling, what I'm feeling, my state of mind, the mood I'm in, is a direct reflection of the thinking I'm having, the meaning that I'm giving to what's going on.
Yeah, how I would say it too. One thing that's very helpful for me is to notice that everything outside of me, all circumstances that I encounter, they're basically neutral. And the meaning or the charge they carry comes from my thinking and the interpretation I put on the circumstances, not the circumstances themselves.
Yeah, that is a good description of what I've mentioned before in the blogs. How when I would get cut off in traffic, I would get angry most of the time. And I did notice that sometimes I didn't get angry. So there was perfect proof that being cut off in traffic, the circumstance is not what created the anger.
Yeah, and taking it to food when we have an urge to eat and we know we're not hungry. We think it's the food that is irresistible, that is calling us, that we can't go
Resist.
beyond. Yeah. And actually, it isn't. It's our thinking about it. And as we begin to see this, as we see it's really not about what's out there, it's about what's in here. We can begin to dissolve those old habits and find freedom.
Yeah, and we're talking about when we're drawn to food, and it can seem so irresistible. But when we're talking about feeling our feelings, we're always looking for how to feel better if we're not feeling good.
Yeah.
And that's where we turn to food lots of times. It's not necessarily that we're thinking about food. We turn to food to deal with the feelings that are coming up about our thinking about what just happened between a friend or a
An
family member.
argument we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, how can I feel better? Well, let me get just this little sweet thing to eat. So I think the food is going to help offset the mood, and the mood does change temporarily. I get a little dopamine hit, and it gives me some time to settle down. But as I've seen more and more clearly this idea that I'm always feeling my thinking, I see that I can short circuit that before it gets to having to eat the food. And that's where it's brought lasting change in my life.
What do you mean short circuited?
Yeah, okay. So I still get triggered sometimes by something my sweet, adorable wife says and does. Now, I really mean that, not sarcastically. I have a sweet, adorable wife. I sometimes see and hear what she does and says as not being sweet and adorable. It's my interpretation, my thinking. And when it doesn't look sweet and adorable, I'm triggered. So now when that feeling comes up, I used to raise my voice and try and change the situation. Fortunately, what she so often does now, she looks at me, often smiles. I think, what's going on for you? Or something like, oh, he's not in a very good mood right now. And she walks away. It's like, whoa, when I don't have something to push back against, I'm left with just me. And I see I'm being kind of foolish.
Yeah.
So in those situations, then I would reflect and I go, oh, maybe this is another example of how I'm feeling my thinking. And it's not really about what she did or said. So I started getting more curious and a little more nimble at catching it sooner. So that's the short circuit.
Yeah.
I see it now when that energy comes up, instead of me buying into this idea that it's her, it's what she did, it's what she said, I'm justified in this feeling, instead of going there, I feel this energy and I go, wait, maybe it's my thinking. And it's so amazing because when I see that, it makes no sense to me and I'm able to let it go. And just like that, I'm not triggered anymore.
Yeah, I think the important thing you're saying is maybe it's my thinking. That takes it off the outer, the circumstance outside me, and allows me to bring my awareness to my own thought, which is what creates our reality and our feeling, not the circumstance. And in that, it's easy to diffuse.
Yeah, yeah. And it can seem like, well, how do I do that? I don't know how to do that. And we actually, all of us do know how to do it. And it is easy and quick, but we're not familiar with it yet. And you had a good analogy about holding onto a pen or dropping a pen that helped me see that more clearly.
So say, what energy does it take to hold on to a pen tight? It takes quite a bit, and it's not very comfortable. How much energy does it take to drop the pen? None. And that's how it is with our thought. We can build on it, make it a bigger experience inside of us with our feelings that follow the thinking, or we can just drop it. And that takes no effort at all. Let it move on through. All it is energy that wants to move. It's nothing more than that. And the more that we see that, the more things on the outside become benign. They don't draw us into them so easily.
Yeah, in my experience of being triggered, it's not even that it just becomes benign sometimes. I got triggered some months ago when Connie came in and asked me to help her with something about an email. And I was focused on a project and didn't want to be disturbed. So I got disturbed and I got triggered and raised my voice and she walked away. And I said, well, this is silly. And as I let the feeling go and my mind settled down and I reviewed that same incident, not only was it just benign, it was like, well, wasn't that sweet? This opportunity that this email difficulty had created was for us to come together, us to connect, me to share something that I could to make her life a little better. And isn't that what I always want? But when my mind is looking at things differently, that same circumstance can create this volcano inside of me instead of this love. I mean, it's amazing when we are able to see that we're always feeling our thinking so that we understand if I'm feeling a lot of negative emotion or I'm really upset about, it's always about something, right? For most of the time.
Yeah.
Then I might want to stop and explore my thinking and see if I'm holding on to a pen really tight. So I shouldn't be disturbed. What is she thinking? Doesn't she know? How would she know? She had a problem. She just asked a simple question. But I grabbed that pen and I said, this wasn't right. I'm not going to let go until I did. And everything changed.
Yeah. It's pretty simple, but new to us. It's not how we've been conditioned, or we're very innocent. We've been conditioned to believe that everything that comes from here and outside of us is real. Nope.
The conditioning piece reminds me of just yesterday or the day before. I was exercising out on the deck, and I looked down, and one of our neighbors was cleaning his truck, and probably granddaughter, 2.5-year-old granddaughter was there. I was charmed watching this little girl just be in life. She would skip along sometimes, and then she'd look at granddad, and then she'd hire help, and then she'd go do this. And it was so, the innocence and the joy of just welcoming life as it's showing up in the moment. And reflecting on how long does it take before our being in the world, we begin to condition our thinking.
Yeah, so this week, as situations arise, or as the urge for food is there, welcome the feeling, whatever it is, instead of resisting it and building it into a bigger thing. Welcome the feeling and let it move and see what you learn.
Yeah, drop the pen. It's okay if the feeling's still there, because when I dropped the pen, when I stopped that hamster wheel of that shouldn't have happened, the feeling can be there, and the impetus to discharge that feeling by lashing out or eating or whatever as a relief to that feeling is really okay. In fact, I see sometimes this is really cool. This is like the energy of the animating force of my life. This is actually my passion being expressed. But it gets distorted by the thinking, so it gets negative and not beneficial to the relationship.
Okay, so the recipe is really yummy. It's a lentil salad that has kind of a savory vinaigrette mustard dressing, and it's great to serve on a bed of lettuce. And it makes a one-dish meal. So we enjoyed it yesterday, and we're going to enjoy more of it today.
Yeah, it's really good. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.